Second week of December, 4 inches of snow on the deck. I was at the kitchen window with a coffee, trying to remember why I bothered with containers at all. Then I saw it. A single white flower, pushing straight up through the snow. I went out without a coat. The hellebore I had stuck in that pot in October, the one I had genuinely forgotten about, had opened its first bloom in the middle of a snowstorm. No glass, no protection, no fuss. That was the moment I stopped buying annuals. Here's the truth most container gardeners are never told. You are not bad at this. You have been sold the wrong plants. Every spring, the garden center rolls out the same petunias, the same geraniums, the same begonias that will be dead by August. That cycle is not gardening. It is a subscription service. The 17 plants in this video break it. Every one is a perennial. Everyone comes back year after year in a pot. Number 16, rots. If you water it normally and gets more beautiful, the more you forget it. Number 14 is the hellebore I was looking at through that window. Flowers in December, every December. And number 4 is the perennial Charlemagne, ordered planted in every royal estate in the year 795. It is not an herb. It never was. Subscribe before we start. Let us start with the 4 plants that will stop a visitor mid-sentence the first time they walk onto your deck. Drama, color, movement. The plants that prove a container does not have to be a hanging basket of impatience. Number 17, Japanese painted fern. Most ferns are green. This one looks like someone took a paintbrush to it. Ethereum Niponicum pictum has silver fronds, purple stems, and a faint metallic shimmer when the light hits it sideways. It does not look like a plant. It looks like jewelry somebody dropped in a pot. I planted my first one in a shaded corner pot in 2019. Forgot about it for most of that summer. By August, it was the most photographed thing on the deck. It came out of the temple gardens of Kyoto, where it has been grown in shade since at least the 17th century. The Perennial Plant Association named it Plant of the Year in 2004, which is the closest the gardening world gets to a Grammy. Stays compact in a pot, hates direct sun, drinks when it remembers to be thirsty, returns every spring without complaint. Think of it as a plant that earns its place by simply existing. The most striking things in a garden are rarely the loudest ones. Number 16, lamb's ear. This is the plant I promised you in the hook. The one that punishes care. Stachys byzantina has leaves so soft and so densely covered in silver fuzz that the first time you touch one, you check whether it is real. It feels exactly like a lamb's ear. That is not a marketing line. That is the plant. Here is what nobody tells you. Water it on a normal schedule, and the leaves rot from the bottom up. Forget it through a hot, dry summer, and the silver intensifies. The fuzz thickens. The whole plant glows. The hairs are not decoration. They are evolutionary armor. Lamb's ear came out of the dry, rocky hillsides of Turkey and the Caucasus, where every drop of moisture had to be trapped against the leaf surface or lost to the wind. I have a pot of the variety called Helene von Stein on the south side of my deck. I water it maybe twice a month. It has never looked better. Think of it as a plant that rewards your forgetfulness. The garden does not always need more from us. Sometimes it needs less. Number 15, coral bells. Most container plants give you 2 weeks of flowers and then go back to being green. Coral bells skip the green entirely. Heuchera comes in colors that should not exist on a leaf. Burgundy that reads almost black. Lime that glows in shade like a streetlight. Silver scrolled over purple. Orange that turns red, that turns copper across a single autumn. The flowers are a small bonus in early summer. The foliage is the entire point, and it works from April to November without asking for anything. The native species came out of the woodland edges of North America, where indigenous communities used it medicinally for centuries before European settlers ever saw it. Then, in the 1990s, a small Oregon nursery called Terra Nova started breeding it for foliage color. They cracked open a color range that nobody knew the plant had. I have a pot of the variety Palace Purple that has been on my shaded porch for 9 years. Same pot, same plant. Never replaced. Think of it as a living rainbow that does not depend on flowers. The plants that work hardest in a garden are rarely the ones in bloom. Number 14, hellebore. This is the plant from the hook, the one I found blooming through 4 inches of snow on my deck in December. Helleborus niger, the Christmas rose, opens its first white flowers in late November or December and holds them for 2 months. Hellebore orientalis, the Lenten rose, picks up where it leaves off and blooms from February through April in pinks, plums, near blacks, and speckled cream. Between the two of them, you have flowers in a container from December to spring, 5 months. In winter, Cistercian monks were growing them in the cloister gardens of 12th century Burgundy, valuing them for blooming during the season of Lent when no other flower would. The name Christmas rose comes from a German legend older than the printing press. In a pot, hellebores are happier than in the ground. They hate wet feet, and a container is the easiest way to give them perfect drainage. Plant them in a gritty mix in autumn. Water them in, then leave them alone for the next decade. Think of it as the plant that performs while everything else is sleeping. The most beautiful things in a garden often arrive when nobody is watching. Now, we move into the 4 plants that make a summer holiday possible. 2 weeks away, no neighbor stopping by to water, no drip irrigation, nothing. And the containers look better when you come back than when you left. Number 13, sedum. The plant that gets stronger every time you ignore it. Sedum stores water in thick, fleshy leaves, the way a camel stores it in its hump. The autumn flowering varieties, Autumn Joy and Matrona, grow into upright clumps with broccoli-like flower heads that bloom pink in September and turn copper for the rest of the year. The low-spreading varieties, Dragon's Blood and Angelina, carpet the soil surface and turn red in cold weather. The Roman physician Dioscorides documented sedum in the 1st century, finding it on the rocky hillsides where almost nothing else survived. Scandinavian turf roofs depended on it for over 1,000 years to insulate buildings through winters that killed everything else. I have a pot of Autumn Joy that went 73 days without water last summer while I was abroad. It came back the next week looking better than the lavender beside it. Think of it as a plant that treats neglect as a compliment. Some plants do not need help, they need trust. Number 12, lavender. Here is the most counterintuitive rule in container gardening. Never feed your lavender. Rich soil makes it grow soft, leggy, and weak. Poor, lean, gritty soil makes it tight, aromatic, and tough enough to survive a winter that would kill a rosebush. Lavender evolved on the dry, rocky slopes of Provence and the Mediterranean coast, where the soil is barely soil at all. Comfort kills it. Hardship makes it. Romans carried it across Europe in their bathing kits. The name comes from the Latin word lavar, which means to wash. The English variety called Hidcote is the hardiest and survives down to -20 degrees. Munstead is more compact for smaller pots. The French and Spanish varieties bloom longer, but need warmer winters. I have a pot of Hidcote on the south side of my house that has been there for 6 years. I water it during the 1st month after planting. After that, almost never. It blooms purple from June to August, and the bees show up in numbers I have never seen on anything else. Think of it as a plant that thrives on what kills everything else. The hardest conditions sometimes produce the most fragrant lives. Number 11. Hens and chicks. Most plants ask you for something. Hens and chicks pay you back in babies. Sempervivum forms a tight rosette of fleshy leaves that looks like a greenstone rose. Around the base of the mother plant, small offsets appear through the season. Those are the chicks. Each one can be pulled off, set on dry soil, and within a week it has rooted and started a rosette of its own. One pot becomes 3, 3 becomes a colony. The Latin name means always living. Charlemagne ordered it planted on the roof of every house in his empire in the year 795, partly because folklore claimed it warded off lightning, and partly because it actually does insulate a thatched roof through a hard winter. I have a shallow stone trough on my front step that started with 3 plants in 2020. It now holds over 40. I have given pieces away to 4 neighbors, and the trough is still full. Think of it as a plant that pays rent in baby plants. The garden is the only place where generosity costs the giver nothing. Number 10, Russian sage. If a designer placed a plant in your container, this is the one they would pick. Perovskia atriplifolia has silvery white stems, fine gray-green leaves, and clouds of small lavender-blue flowers that float above the foliage from July through September. The texture is airy. The color is cool. It makes everything around it look more expensive. Despite the name, it is not a sage, and it is not Russian. It came out of the steppes of Central Asia and Iran, where the summers are brutal and the soil is poor, and was named in the 1840s after a Russian general called Vasily Perovsky, who served as governor of Orenburg. I have a large terracotta pot on the corner of my deck with the variety little spire, which stays under 3 feet and does not flop. I cut it down to 6 inches every March. By July, it is 3 feet of silver and blue. The bees work it from morning to dusk. I water it once a week in the worst heat. Think of it as a plant that makes the rest of your container look professional. The best companions are the ones that make everything around them better. If this list is changing how you think about your pots, hit subscribe and the bell. Number 4 is the perennial Charlemagne ordered, planted across an empire, and we are getting close. Now we move into the 4 plants that solve the hardest problem in container gardening: the shaded balcony, the north-facing porch, the deck under the maple tree, the one corner where every annual you have ever planted has died by August. Number 9, hosta. Most gardeners think of hostas as a ground-level plant. They are wrong. Hostas are better in a pot than they are in the ground. In the soil, hostas have 2 enemies. Slugs eat them down to ribs. Tree roots steal their water. In a container, you eliminate both. The plant gets every drop you give it. The slugs cannot find it as easily, and the leaves come up cleaner, larger, and more colorful than they ever do in the ground. The genus came out of the woodlands of Japan, Korea, and China, where it has been cultivated in temple gardens since at least the 16th century. Sum and substance has chartreuse leaves the size of dinner plates. Blue Angel is deep blue-gray. Patriot has crisp white edges that look hand-painted. I have a Sum and Substance in a half barrel that has been in the same pot for 11 years. It gets bigger every spring. Think of it as a plant that gets more valuable every year you do not move it. Some things only reveal their full beauty when given time and patience. Number 8, Astilbe. Most shade plants give you leaves and ask you to be grateful for them. Astilbe gives you fireworks. The flowers are feathery plumes that rise above fern-like foliage in late spring and early summer. White, pink, peach, deep red, lavender. They look like something a florist arranged for a wedding, but they grow in the kind of damp shaded corner where most container plants slowly give up. The bloom lasts 3 to 5 weeks. After the flowers fade, the dried plumes hold their shape and their color right through autumn and into winter, so the pot keeps working long after the show is over. The plant came out of the moist woodland edges of Japan, China, and Korea. Then in the early 1900s, a German breeder named Georg Ahrens spent 40 years crossing species at his nursery in Wuppertal and developed almost every modern hybrid in cultivation today. The variety Finale has dark red flowers and bronze foliage. Bridal Veil is pure white. Deutschland blooms early, with crisp white plumes on dark green leaves. I have a Finale in a glazed pot beside my back door that has bloomed reliably for 7 Junes in a row. It needs water more often than the others on this list. That is the only thing it asks for. Think of it as a plant that does the work of a florist for the price of a pot. The most generous things in a garden never feel like they are trying. Number 7, Virginia. This is the plant that does 4 seasons of work for 1 season of effort. The leaves are huge, glossy, and leathery, sometimes 8 inches across, forming a perfect rosette of evergreen color at the base of the pot. In spring, clusters of pink, white, or magenta flowers shoot up on tall stems before most other perennials are awake. In summer, the leaves stay deep green and shed water like a waxed jacket. In autumn, they flush bronze. In winter, the variety called Winter Glow turns a deep burgundy red that looks almost lit from within against the snow. It came out of the cold mountain regions of Siberia, the Himalayas, and Mongolia, which is why nothing about a British or American winter bothers it. The plant arrived in European gardens in the 18th century, and by the early 20th century, the great English garden designer Gertrude Jekyll was planting it in masses at her Munstead Wood garden in Surrey. She used it because almost nothing else stayed evergreen and structural through a cold, wet winter. Modern container gardeners have mostly forgotten it. That is a quiet shame. I planted Bergenia in a stone trough 5 years ago, watered it in for the first month, and have essentially ignored it since. It has never looked better. Think of it as a permanent living sculpture in your shade containers. The most reliable companions are the ones who do not need attention to keep showing up. If this is changing how you see your shaded corners, drop a comment and tell me which one you are starting with. We are now into the top 6, and number 4 is closer than you think. Number 6, Cadiment. Most flowering plants give you 2 weeks of bloom and then go quiet for the rest of the year. Catmint blooms for 6 months and asks for one haircut in the middle. Nepeta sends up clouds of soft blue-purple flowers from late May straight through to the first hard frost in October. The foliage is silvery green, slightly aromatic when you brush against it, and the bees and butterflies work it harder than almost anything else in the garden. Around July, after the first heavy bloom, you give it what English gardeners call the Chelsea chop, which is just cutting it back by half. Within 3 weeks, it reblooms with twice the flowers it had before. The plant has been grown in European herb gardens for over 1,000 years. It appears in the Capitulare de Villis, the 8th century estate decree issued by Charlemagne, listed among the plants required in every royal garden across the Frankish Empire. Most cats actually ignore it. That habit belongs to its cousin, catnip. The variety Walker's Low won Perennial Plant of the Year in 2007. 6. Hill's Giant is taller and more dramatic for larger pots. I have a pot of Walker's Low on the corner of my deck that the bees find within an hour of the first flower opening every May. Think of it as a plant that pays out from spring to frost on a single haircut a year. The longest blooms in the garden are rarely the ones that demand the most attention. Now, we are into the top 5. The plants that build the backbone of a year-round container garden. The ones that earn their place, not with one moment of drama, but with month after month of quiet, reliable beauty. Number 5. Daylily. So each flower lasts exactly 1 day. So why is this on the list? Because every plant produces dozens of buds, and a new flower opens every single morning for 10 to 12 weeks straight. The botanical name Hemerocalis comes from the Greek words for day and beauty. The flower opens at sunrise, holds its color through the day, and closes by dusk. The next morning, another bud opens beside it. From late May to early August, a mature daylily in a pot produces a fresh bouquet every day without you doing a single thing. The plant has been cultivated in Chinese gardens for over 2,500 years. It appears in this area, a Chinese encyclopedia compiled in the 3rd century before Christ, where it is documented both as an ornamental and as a vegetable. The flowers were eaten, not just admired. The variety called Stella d'Oro reblooms continuously from spring to frost. Happy Returns is pale yellow and equally tireless. Pardon me, has red flowers with yellow throats. I planted Stella d'Oro in a wide ceramic pot in 2021. It has bloomed every summer since, divided itself once, and never been replaced. Think of it as a flower subscription that delivers a fresh bouquet every morning. The most generous plants are the ones that give a little every day rather than everything at once. Number 4. Rosemary. This is the plant from the hook, the one Charlemagne ordered planted across an empire. Rosemary is not a herb. It is a woody Mediterranean perennial that lives for 30 years in a terracotta pot if you let it. The garden center puts it on the kitchen shelf in a 4-inch plastic tube and calls it seasonal. That is a marketing decision. The plant itself disagrees. Romans grew it in courtyard pots 2,000 years ago. In the year 795, Charlemagne issued the estate decree known as the Capitulare de Villis, ordering rosemary planted in every royal garden across the Frankish Empire. Greek students wore garlands of it in their hair during examinations because they believed it strengthened memory, and it was woven into wedding crowns in medieval Spain as a symbol of fidelity. It evolved on dry rocky cliffs in southern Europe and North Africa. Cold gets it. Wet feet kill it. A container is the answer because you control drainage in a way you never could in heavy garden soil. The variety ARP is the hardiest and survives down to -20. Tuscan blue blooms hard in spring. The creeping forms cascade over the rim of a pot like a green waterfall. I have a Tuscan blue in a clay pot on my front step that has lived through 9 winters. I'd drag it inside if the temperature drops below -10. Otherwise, it lives outside, blooms blue every March, and gives me fresh rosemary year-round. Think of it as the perennial we mistakenly demoted to a herb. The most enduring plants are the ones we forgot to take seriously. If this list is changing how you think about your pots, hit subscribe and the bell. We are into the top 3, and the last plant on this list might be the most underrated perennial in cultivation. Number 3. Coneflower. Most flowering perennials earn their keep once. Coneflower earns it 3 times. Echinacea blooms from late June through September, with daisy-like flowers in colors that did not exist in cultivation 20 years ago. Classic-y purple, white, hot orange, coral, deep red, lemon yellow, bright green. After the petals fall in autumn, the dark, spiky seed heads stay standing through winter, and goldfinches and chickadees work them for food right through January. 3 jobs, 1 plant, 0 replacement. The plant came out of the prairies of central North America. The Lakota, Cheyenne, and Pawnee nations used it medicinally for centuries before any European settler ever wrote it down. And the modern echinacea supplement industry traces directly back to that traditional knowledge. The variety Magnus, with its classic purple petals, won Perennial Plant of the Year in 1998. White Swan is a clean ivory. Cheyenne Spirit blooms in a mix of warm tones from a single seed packet. I have a pot of Magnus that I planted in 2022. The first year it gave me 6 flowers. The second year, 18. Last summer, more than 30. The goldfinches found it the first October, and they have come back every year since. Think of it as a plant that earns its place 3 times. Flowers, birds, and structure. The most generous gardens are the ones that keep giving long after the gardener has stopped paying attention. Number 2. Ornamental grasses. Most container plants give you 1 thing. Grasses give you 4. Movement, sound, structure, and 4 genuine seasons of presence. When wind moves through ornamental grass, the whole pot becomes alive. The blades bend. The seed heads sway. There is an audible rustle that no flowering plant in the garden produces. In spring, fresh green growth pushes up. In summer, the plumes form. In autumn, many varieties turn gold, copper, and burgundy. In winter, the dried structure holds against frost and snow when every other container has given up. The German nurseryman Karl Forster spent his life championing grasses in landscape design from his nursery in Potsdam in the early 1900s. The cultivar named after him, Karl Forster feather reed grass, is now the most planted ornamental grass in the world. Blue fescue forms tight blue-gray mounds the size of a football. Japanese forest grass cascades like green hair. Hamilton fountain grass produces fuzzy bottlebrush plumes that children always reach out to touch. I have a Karl Forster in a tall ceramic pot beside my front steps. 5 feet of vertical structure from May to March. I cut it back once a year in late winter. That is the entire job. Think of it as the container plant that looks designed even in February. The most architectural things in a garden are the ones that hold their shape when nothing else does. Number 1, hardy geranium. This is the plant that quietly outperforms every other perennial on this list, and almost nobody puts it in a container. Hardy geranium, also called cranesbill, is not the red window box geranium most people think of. That one is actually a pelargonium and dies at the first frost. The true hardy geranium is a mounding perennial that comes back year after year, blooms for 5 to 6 months straight, and asks for nothing. The variety called Roseanne was named Plant of the Centenary at the Royal Horticultural Society's Chelsea Flower Show in 2013, beating every perennial introduced in the previous 100 years. It blooms violet blue from late May to the first hard frost. No deadheading, no fertilizing, no fuss. The leaves turn red and orange in autumn before the plant disappears for winter and returns the following spring. The genus has been grown in English cottage gardens since the 16th century. Gertrude Jekyll called it the perfect plant for any garden. I planted Roseanne in a glazed pot on my back patio in 2020. It has bloomed continuously every year from May to November and never needed a single intervention. Think of it as everything every other plant on this list is trying to be. The greatest gifts in a garden are usually the ones that ask the least in return. 17 plants. Not one of them needs replacing next spring. The garden center will not tell you this. The annual shelf is the most profitable corner of the store, and it depends on you forgetting that perennials exist. But the truth is older than any of it. Cistercian monks knew it in 12th century Burgundy. Charlemagne knew it in 795. Every gardener who ever lived before 1950 knew it. A pot is not a temporary thing. It is a place where a plant can live for a decade, get more beautiful every year, and stop asking you for anything. Which one are you starting with? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe for the rest. The garden was never meant to be this much work. We just stopped planting the things that did the work for us.